Welcome back into Talking Fitchburg. Joined today from the National Weather Service Milwaukee. Sullivan is my friend. Well, I call him my friend, but he's definitely my friend. Tim Hallbach, National Weather Service. Tim, thank you so much for taking the time out. I know it's a very busy time of year, especially because you got the storm spotter classes going on right now. You have an eclipse this week going on as we're taping this, so it's just nonstop action. And there's just been a little bit of severe weather, and we're the month April 8th today that we're taping this. What's going on, Tim?
It's just a normal year in Wisconsin where every year is a little bit different. You get thunderstorms with tornadoes in February, and you get snowstorms in April. So that's just kind of the new norm for us to just be alert for anything.
Apparently. I mean, it has been one heck of a year. Just to kick things off, in general, the importance of this week of sharing severe weather safety, kind of getting the mindset. Is it too late now? Like, should we be starting like in January? But ultimately, why are we doing this?
So typically, this is right before when we start getting into our peak severe weather season. So the warmer we get, the more likely it is that we're going to see more and more thunderstorms. So the goal right now is to get people thinking about what their plans are, transitioning out from being in winter mode to going into summer mode. So you want to start thinking about this stuff before we have severe weather. For a lot of people, you've been here long enough, you know the deal with, what to do when tornadoes and severe weather happens. So it's a little bit more of just kind of remembering the things about like how to have multiple ways to receive warnings, what do the warnings mean, how do I get this information and things like that. So it's just kind of hey, like winter's almost done. It should be almost done. Start thinking about severe weather.
So obviously, the last 2 years, for whatever reason, Tim, we have seen severe weather happen in the winter months, and that's not. It can happen, right? It can happen any time of the year. Now we can mark that February. We've marked our first tornado in history, and Wisconsin was the only month that didn't have it. But is this something that we need to wrap our head around, that this can happen, and we may see this more in the future, earlier or during the winter time?
I think the main thing is just knowing that anything can happen if the right ingredients come together, and how important it is to pay attention to the forecasts, especially as like the day goes on, because a lot of times the forecast does change. It will change from 3 days out to what it looks like that day. So we spend a lot of time trying to guide the forecast towards where we think the endpoint ends up going. So, I talked to a lot of people that were in the path of that February tornado in the Evansville area, and everybody got the warnings. Everyone that I talked to, at least on their phones, they got the warning. They went to their shelter, so they knew what they were supposed to do. Um, and it was just the concern I always have is people just disregarding, like, well, it's February, like, what's the tornado warning mean? But sometimes there's other clues that are like, hey, there's thunder all over the place right now. Like, hey, this is a legit warning. So just it's all about awareness and just being like in the know for whether or not there's going to be an actual tornado. Obviously, it's not going to be as frequent as when we typically would get them, but we can have these things happen in the off season.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it just feels like it's getting earlier and earlier every year, and there's a number of factors to that, and like you said, you got to be on the know and everything. Has there been any surprises, I guess, this year as you've been out for when you go out and do the storm damage checks and stuff, and just seeing the power of these storms so far? Has that been a surprise to you, or is it just a storm's a storm, and and we assess it and go from there?
Yeah, it's one of the strongest storms I've seen, just purely based on what we saw on radar from that night. There are a lot of things like the debris signature that, in my time here in the last 9 years, we haven't seen something like that. So it's been interesting how that came together, because the first tornado was a 1, which is still a decent tornado. But to get a 2 or higher it takes a lot more to come together. And for that one, if you watch the radar, I think the thing that was interesting was just one storm merging into another to be able to spin up that strong of a circulation. So we've spent some time looking back on it. The main thing there is just being thankful that everyone was safe. Nobody got severely injured from it, but still some lessons to be learned about, if you're in your car, what do you do when you're in a car? Hopefully you're not in your car, because it's a tough spot to be in, trying to be aware of what's going on around you and then figuring out where you need to get to. So for us, it's, just every year is different. Every year we get something like last March, we had a bunch of tornadoes at the end of March. So we just kind of roll with things here. That's what makes this job interesting.
To say the least, yeah. Then you forecast, a huge snowstorm in between of all this stuff. So whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Tim, finally, just for this interview today, the importance of not only just focusing on, we definitely focus on tornadoes and thunderstorms, but part of this week too incorporates other factors such as putting a plan together, such as being prepared and making sure you take to the warnings, the flooding piece of it all too. So we have to look beyond the severe weather and other things. Severe weather incorporates so many different aspects. So just an importance of reminding to listen to all the messages that come out of this week. How important is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that you can get yourself into trouble here in Wisconsin. So just knowing some of the more ways that you might be vulnerable to the weather. So if your situation is that you live in an apartment complex and, we're spending a lot of time talking about going to the basement, what's the alternative for you when you're at home, being just in an interior room, or everybody's got a different situation. So just understanding what your situation is and when you're vulnerable. So if you do a lot of driving, just, knowing where storms are and all that can be really a challenge. So what kind of things are you going to do to try to minimize the hazards that come with doing something like that? So if you're an outdoor worker, obviously like lightning could be a big concern for you as well. So you know what to do if there's a thunderstorm. Obviously get in your car, ride it out, you should be fine. But is it a next level thing? Is there tornadoes, severe weather, possible? So we can't tell everybody every single scenario and every single thing that they should do. So that's where this week helps out with kind of poking people to say like, hey, if I'm outside and there's lightning, like I'm vulnerable, what do I do? Start thinking about those kinds of things.
Gotcha. Well, Tim, we're going to focus on another interview, kind of going through the different scenarios and keeping you safe. But if people want to stay up to date just on the importance of safety, your website and social media campaigns are really good. But I mean, I like them. But there is a lot of information out there if you do want to stay connected year round with you guys and what's going on.
So our main website is weather.gov/Milwaukee. You can also put Madison in there and you'll get to our website as well. But that's where we put all our information. You'll find our 7-day forecast as well. Storm Prediction Center forecast, things like that to figure out if there's a severe weather threat for you. So probably way too much information, but that's the place to start.
I love it, but yeah, I mean it's good. It's a good resource place, I would say. Get your resources and whatnot. Well, Tim, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time, and we'll look forward to having you back on the show real soon.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.